Just so I ruled the Ring Danes' country. For 50 years defended them in wartime with spear and sword against constant assaults by many tribes. I came to believe my enemies had faded from the face of the earth. Still, what happened was a hard reversal, from bliss to grief. Grendel struck, after lying in wait. He laid waste the land, and from that moment my mind was in dread of his depredations. So I praise God in his heavenly glory that I live to behold this head dripping blood, and after such harrowing I can look upon it in triumph at last. Take your place, then, with pride and pleasure, and move to the feast. Tomorrow morning our treasure will be shared and showered upon you. The Geat was elated and gladly obeyed the old man's bidding. He sat on the bench, and soon all was restored the same as before. Happiness came back, the hall was thronged, and a banquet set forth. Black night fell and covered them in darkness. Then the company rose, for the old campaigner, the gray-haired prince, was ready for bed, and a need for rest came over the brave shield-bearing Geat. He was a weary seafarer far from home, so immediately a house-guard guided him out, one whose office entailed looking after. Whatever a thane on the road in those days might need or require, it was noble courtesy. That great heart rested, the hall towered, gold-shingled and gabled, and the guest slept in it, until the black raven, with raucous glee, announced heaven's joy, and a hurry of brightness overran the shadows. Warriors rose quickly, impatient to be off. Their own country was beckoning. The nobles and the bold voyager longed to be aboard his distant boat. Then that stalwart fighter ordered Trunting to be brought to Unferth, and bade Unferth take the sword, and thanked him for lending it. He said he had found it a friend in battle, and a powerful help. He put no blame on the blade's cutting edge. He was a considerate man. And there the warriors stood in their war gear, eager to go, while their honored lord approached the platform where the others sat. The undaunted hero addressed Hrothgar. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. Now we who crossed the wide sea have to inform you that we feel a desire to return to Hygelac. Here we have been welcomed and thoroughly entertained. You have treated us well. If there is any favor on earth I can perform beyond deeds of arms I have done already, anything that would merit your affections more, I shall act, my lord, with alacrity. If ever I hear from across the ocean that people on your borders are threatening battle, as attackers have done from time to time, I shall lend with 1,000 thanes at my back to help your cause. Hygelac may be young to rule a nation, but this much I know about the king of the Geats. He will come to my aid, and want to support me by word and action in your hour of need, when honor dictates that I raise a hedge of spears around you. Then, if Hrethric should think about traveling as a king's son to the court of the Geats, he will find many friend. Foreign places yield more to one who is himself worth meeting. Hrothgar spoke and answered him. The Lord in his wisdom sent you those words, and they came from the heart. I have never heard so young a man make truer observations. You are strong in body and mature in mind, impressive in speech. If it should come to pass that Hrethel's descendant dies beneath a spear, if deadly battle or the sword blade or disease fells the prince who guards your people, and you are still alive, I firmly believe the seafaring Geats won't find a man worthier of acclaim as their king and defender than you, if only you would undertake the lordship of your homeland. My liking for you deepens with time, dear Beowulf. What you have done is to draw two peoples, the Geat nation and us neighboring Danes, into shared peace and a pact of friendship. In spite of hatreds we have harbored in the past, for as long as I rule this far-flung land, treasures will change hands, and each side will treat the other with gifts across the gannet's bath, over the broad sea. World prows will bring presents and tokens. I know your people are beyond reproach in every respect, steadfast in the old way, with friend or foe. Then the earl's defender furnished the hero with 12 treasures and told him to set out, sail with those gifts safely home. To the people he loved, but to return promptly. And so the good and gray-haired Dane, that high-born king, kissed Beowulf and embraced his neck, then broke down in sudden tears. 2 forebodings disturbed him in his wisdom, but one was stronger. Never more would they meet each other face to face, and such was his affection that he could not help being overcome. His fondness for the man was so deep-founded, it warmed his heart, and wound wound the heartstrings tight in his breast. The embrace ended, and Beowulf, glorious in his gold regalia, stepped on the green earth. Straining at anchor and ready for boarding, his boat awaited him. So they went on their journey, and Hrothgar's generosity was praised repeatedly. He was a peerless king until old age sapped his strength and did him mortal harm, as it has done so many. Down to the waves then, dressed in the web of their chainmail and war shirts, the young men marched in high spirits. The coast guard spied them, thanes setting forth, the same as before. His salute this time, from the top of the cliff, was far from unmannerly. He galloped to meet them, and as they took ship in their shining gear, he said how welcome they would be in Geatland. Then the broad hull was beached on the sand, to be cargoed with treasure, horses, and war gear. The curved prow motioned. The mast stood high, above Hrothgar's riches in the loaded hold. The guard who had watched the boat was given a sword with gold fittings, and in future days that present would make him a respected man at his place on the mead bench. Then the keel plunged and shook in the sea, and they sailed from Denmark. Right away the mast was rigged with its sea shawl. Sail ropes were tightened, timbers drummed, and stiff winds kept the wave crosser skimming ahead as she heaved forward. Her foamy neck was fleet and buoyant, a lapped prow loping over currents, until finally the Geats caught sight of coastline and familiar cliffs. The keel reared up. Wind lifted it home. It hit on the land. The harbor guard came hurrying out to the rolling water. He had watched the offing long and hard, on the lookout for those friends. With the anchor cables, he moored their craft right where it had beached, in case a backwash might catch the hull and carry it away. Then he ordered the prince's treasure trove to be carried ashore. It was a short step from there to where Hrethel's son and heir, Hygelac the Gold Giver, makes his home, on a secure cliff in the company of retainers. The building was magnificent, the king majestic, ensconced in his hall, and although Hygd, his queen, was young, a few short years at court, her mind was thoughtful, and her manners sure. Haereth's daughter behaved generously and stinted nothing when she distributed bounty to the Geats. Great Queen Modthrith perpetrated terrible wrongs. If any retainer ever made bold to look her in the face, if an eye not her lord's stared at her directly during daylight, the outcome was sealed. He was bound in hand-tightened shackles, racked, tortured, until doom was announced, death by the sword, slash of blade, blood gush, and death qualms in an evil display. Even a queen outstanding in beauty must not overstep like that. A queen should weave peace, not punish the innocent with loss of life for imagined insults. But Hemming's kinsman put a halt to her ways, and drinkers round the table had another tale. She was less of a bane to people's lives, less cruel-minded, after she was married to the brave Offa, a bride arrayed in her gold finery given away by a caring father, ferried to her young prince over dim seas. In days to come she would grace the throne and grow famous, for her good deeds and conduct of life. Her high devotion to the hero king, who was the best king, it has been said, between the two seas or anywhere else on the face of the earth. Offa was honored far and wide for his generous ways, his fighting spirit, and his far-seeing defense of his homeland. From him there sprang Eomer, Garmund's grandson, kinsman of Hemming, his warrior's mainstay and master of the field. Heroic Beowulf and his band of men crossed the wide strand, striding along the sandy foreshore. The sun shone, the world's candle warmed them from the south, as they hastened to where, as they had heard, the young king, Ongentheo's killer, and his people's protector, was dispensing rings inside his bawn. Beowulf's return was reported to Hygelac as soon as possible. News that the captain was now in the enclosure, his battle brother back from the fray, alive and well, walking back to the hall. Room was quickly made on the king's orders, and the troops filed across the clear floor. After Hygelac had offered greetings to his loyal thane in lofty speech, he and his kinsman, that hailed survivor, sat face to face. Haereth's daughter moved about with the mead jug in her hand, taking care of the company, filling the cups that warriors held out. Then Hygelac began to put courteous questions to his old comrade in the high hall. He hankered to know every tale the sea-geats had to tell. "How did you fare on your foreign voyage, dear Beowulf, when you abruptly decided to sail away across the salt water and fight at Heorot? Did you help Hrothgar much in the end? Could you ease the prince of his well-known troubles? Your undertaking cast my spirits down. I dreaded the outcome of your expedition and pleaded with you long and hard to leave the killer be. Let the South Danes settle their own blood feud with Grendel. So God be thanked, I am granted this sight of you safe and sound." Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. "What happened, Lord Hygelac, is hardly a secret any more among men in this world. Myself and Grendel coming to grips on the very spot where he visited destruction, on the victory shieldings, and violated life and limb, losses I avenged, so no earthly offspring of Grendel's need ever boast of that bout before dawn, no matter how long the last of his evil family survives. When I first landed, I hastened to the ring hall and saluted Hrothgar. Once he had discovered why I had come, the son of Halfdane sent me immediately to sit with his own sons on the bench. It was a happy gathering. In my whole life I have never seen mead enjoyed more in any hall on earth. Sometimes the queen herself appeared, peace pledged between nations, to hearten the young ones and hand out a torque to a warrior, then take her place. Sometimes Hrothgar's daughter distributed ale to older ranks, in order on the benches. I heard the company call her Freowaru, as she made her rounds presenting men with the gem-studded bowl, young bride-to-be, to the gracious Ingeld in her gold-rimmed attire. The friend of the Shieldings favors her betrothal. The guardian of the kingdom sees good in it, and hoped this woman will heal old wounds and grievous feuds. But generally the spear is prompt to retaliate when a prince is killed, no matter how admirable the bride may be. Think how the Heathobards will be bound to feel their lord Ingeld and his loyal thanes when he walks in with that woman to the feast. Danes are at the table, being entertained, honored guest in glittering regalia, burnished ringmail that was their host's birthright, looted when the Heathobards could no longer wield their weapons in the shield clash, when they went down with their beloved comrades and forfeited their lives. Then an old spearman will speak while they are drinking, having glimpsed some heirloom that brings alive memories of the massacre. His mood will darken and heart-stricken in the stress of his emotion. He will begin to test a young man's temper and stir up trouble, starting like this. Now, my friend, don't you recognize your father's sword, his favorite weapon? Then one he wore when he went out in his war mask to face the Danes on that final day. After Weathergeld died and his men were doomed, the Shieldings quickly took the field, and now here's the son of one or other of those same killers coming through our hall, overbearing us, mouthing boasts, and rigged in armor that by right is yours. And so he keeps on, recalling and accusing, working things up with bitter words until one of the lady's retainers lies spattered in blood, split open on his father's account. The killer knows the lie of the land and escaped with his life. Then on both sides the oath-bound lords will break the peace. A passionate hate will build up in Ingeld, and love for his bride will falter in him as the feud rankles. I therefore suspect the good faith of the Heathobards, the truth of their friendship, and the trustworthiness of their alliance with the Danes. But now, my lord, I shall carry on with my account of Grendel, the whole story of everything that happened in the hand-to-hand fight. After Heaven's gem had gone mildly to earth, that maddened spirit, the terror of those twilights, came to attack us, where we stood guard, still safe inside the hall. Their deadly violence came down on Hanskio, and he fell, as fate ordained, the first to perish. Rigged out for the combat, a comrade from our ranks had come to grief in Grendel's maw. He ate up the entire body. There was blood on his teeth. He was bloated and furious, all roused up, yet still unready to leave the hall empty-handed. Renowned for his might, he matched himself against me. Wildly reaching, he had this roomy pouch, a strange accoutrement, intricately strung and hung at the ready, a rare patchwork of devilishly fitting dragon skins. I had done him no wrong, yet the raging demon wanted to cram me and many others into this bag. But it was not to be. Once I got to my feet in a blind fury, it would take too long to tell how I repaid the terror of the land for every life he took. And so one credit for you, my king, and for all your people. And although he got away to enjoy life's sweetness for a while longer, his right hand stayed behind him in Herat, evidence of his miserable overthrow, and he dived into murk on the mere bottom.